What up, Mr. Ross? How you doing today, man?
Good, man. Trying to hold it together, insurance things.
That's real. Life happens, as they say in the many commercials. Life happens.
Life happens.
Yeah. So we're gonna go back to when life was happening around like 88, 89 today. Last we talked, it was about De La Soul's 3 Feet High and Rising, and
Yeah.
we talked through the creation of that. And before we get into the subject of today's conversation, I'm wondering, you're working at Tommy Boy now. You get assigned to De La. You don't sign them. So
Right.
while you're working on that album, who else are you looking at, scoping in the scene when you're thinking about people you want to bring to the table at Tommy Boy?
Well, I was thinking about the flavor unit, because 45 King had all these promos on Red Alert that were phenomenal.
Cool DJ Red Alert with the 45 King special.
And a bunch of them became records, including this Cuts Got Flavor. I thought 45 King's production was next level. So I'd always wanted to try to do something with him, and coincidentally, he literally walked up to me at the Latin Quarter, and it was so weird because there's no internet back then, but he totally knew who I was, which I guess wasn't that weird because it was like two white people in the Latin Quarter, me and Funkin' Clan, maybe Search. And he was like, "Yo, you Dante Ross?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he bugged me out because he didn't look like he should be at the Latin Quarter. He was like nice. He was like a friendly guy, like no jewels, wasn't like thugged out.
Yeah.
He had like a little Jerry curl, kind of like not Jerry curl, but like he had some roots and berries in the hair, and he had some he had some big ass headphones around his neck, like almost studio headphones.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yo, you want to hear some joints?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he literally pulled out a Walkman and he used to put, the marking tape, like with letters on it.
Yeah.
It said 45 King on his
Wow.
Walkman. I was like, "Yo, who is this guy?"
Like
He
a
said-
homemade label maker kind of situation?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, the round gun thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, "This guy is unbelievable. Like, who is this guy?" He's such an oddball in the best of ways. And he played me all the shit that I thought was phenomenal. And I was like, "Yo, you need to come to Tommy Boy and come play me joints." And he called me, like, that was a Friday. He called me, I think it was Monday, and it was him and Fab Five Freddy, who was like my old school boy.
Yeah.
He later on we wouldn't be as tight, but we were at that point. We were friends, and they played me "Wrath of My Madness" over the phone, amongst other songs, and it really stood out. And I was listening on my speakerphone, I think, in my shitty office, and I was like, "This is incredible. You need to come bring everyone to my office." That's what I told him. Bring the flavor unit to my office, kid. So he came to the office. I think it was 2 days later, with an assortment of flavor unit members. I believe it was Latif, Lakim Shabazz, Marky Fresh, who I don't think was ever an official member, 45 King, and Latifah, possibly Apache. I think Apache too. And maybe Latif wasn't. One of them wasn't there. So he proceeded to play me songs by them, and they were all cool. And then at the second or third song was "Wrath of My." I said, "Yo, play the girl though. Play the girl." She was there, and the other thing was she was so fresh faced and smiley, and she was
How old do
really.
you think she was around that
She was
time?
in high school. She was a senior in high school.
Wow.
And she was really cool. And she dressed really cool. She had like a dashiki top on and some like some shorts and like some floppy socks and some kicks. She like looked really cool. She had the bob, and her whole shit was fly. And so I was like, "Yo, play me her shit." And they played me, and it blew me away.
Irene, the lesson of today. You have to listen to each and every single word I have to say, because the ruler Lord Ramsey is on my side, and I'm the princess of the posse. So yo, take it light.
And,
The boss and it says she a cool one.
Monica Lynch was in her office, which was adjacent to the conference room, and she came in. She's like, "Dante, come in my office." She's like, "We have to sign her." And I was like, "Yeah, we really do." So she gave me the green light right there, and I literally told her, like, "We want to give you a record deal." And she was like, "Okay, cool." And her lawyer was Richard Grable. And I remember that after we had the meeting, we went down to this park off East River, and we shot some basketball, and she was a high school basketball player, which was cool, which gave me like another look into her life. And she was really cool. And we smoked a bunch of weed, a bunch of dirt weed, and we hung out. And one of them knew my man, Tahid, who I used to run the streets with. He lived in Jersey. He was from Jersey City or Newark, and he knew them. So we had some people in common too, which was cool. We found that out when we were hanging out. And from there, we did the deal. It was a relatively cheap deal, singles deal, and the rest, you could say, is history. She was off to the races. That record, we got the test pressing during New Music Seminar, and I walked around and gave test pressings of the 12-inch to people. And Red Alert, like literally, I gave him that record, and he played that shit the next day on air on his midday mix show. Or maybe it was the 5 o'clock mix show. It was a midday mix show, I believe. He played it, and he played it and cut it back and forth and played it. And then there was a party at a club called MK that night, and I went to the party, and he was rocking it. And I was like, oh, shit. He was like, yo, and he was pointing out, he's like, this one's rocking. And so I knew I had a song.
And that's Wrapped in My Madness.
Yeah, and it's that meter sample. I think that's maybe why I like the record too, because it was, I was always like trying to identify samples. And I knew that sample right away, Chicken Scratch. I was like, oh, that's the meters. That shit's dope as hell.
My mellow Latifah was kicking flavors. The Ari Posse said, yo, Latifah, we can do this. So I paused and took a thought. Then my brilliance I caught, and I agreed, because I already knew this.
Because my pops was a Meters fan. So it was on from there. 45 King was like a really amazing cat. He had this studio in his basement, and he had, it was so wild. He had like a restaurant booth in it. You walked in through a subway turnstile. He had all this crazy memorabilia everywhere, and records. He had a board. He had a 1/4-inch tape machine that he tracked everything down to. He had his tape, his cassettes. He had his little like home studio that was pretty on point. And I remember when it was time for him to get his advance for making a record, he wanted Tommy Boy to, instead of paying him, give him a PO at Sam Ash for his fee, which I believe was $1,000 or $1,500 to make the record. And with that money, he asked me to go pick him up at S900. I picked up an S900, and I brought it to him in East Orange, New Jersey. And he met me at the bus. And I got off the bus, and I had the S900. And that changed the entire way he made records.
Wow. Okay, so I think 45 King is a very interesting figure in the history of hip hop.
He's super slept on for how advanced he was.
He's got to be the most underrated producer in hip hop history.
One of them, considering that he also did Stan, which no one knows.
He did Stan. He did Hard Knock Life. He's all through the eras, right? Like he's had songs out and
a 900 number, one of the all-time greatest rap dance records of all time.
One of the greatest beats of all time, which ends up being
and
Let Me Clear My Throat.
It's a dance record. Yeah. So and he also made house records.
Okay.
And he had all those instrumental records he made for Tough City. I feel like some of his best work was like on those instrumental records without rappers. He was like otherworldly, and literally his promos on Red Alert were like the highlight of the show for me. I would freak out when they came on, and the way he chopped up drums, like his drum sounds were like, he used the thunderous kick like before anyone did that wasn't an 808.
Yeah.
He always used the Lynn Collins Think kick drum, and he always had it sound so big. He was so fucking talented, that guy, man. He was one of the earliest at really chopping and digging.
Why do you think that he's not talked about the same way that a Pete Rock or a Premier or even Marley Marl? He's
a pretty egoless cat.
Okay.
He doesn't have a huge ego. He's a quirky individual. He's like a big kid, kind of. Mm-hmm. So and at some point in time, I think he had some personal issues that derailed him a bit. And I think that hurt him as well. But he also didn't have one artist who he was like, this is my artist. He had the Flavor Unit, and he kind of didn't sign them to himself, right? And he didn't have ownership.
So they were just like a loosely collective crew.
Right. They were the dudes who go to his basement and they'd all rap on the Tough City records.
Right.
And so he didn't have ownership of those guys the way Marley had ownership of, perceived ownership of Cold Chillin'. But to me, he's every bit as talented as Marley, if not more creative. And speaking of Marley, 45 King also did Set It Off.
Okay.
And he never gets credit for it.
Attack, react, exact, or Mac, or move you in. A strong song as long as you groove to them. I keep the crowd loud when you hype. Do damage on stage and injure the mic.
Huh. So that used to happen a lot, huh? Like back in that time, people like I hear like stuff about Large Professor doing stuff that didn't, he didn't get credit
Large
for.
Pro did he did Cool G Rap, Wanted Dead or Alive.
Yeah.
But 45 King did Set It Off. Kane had asked him to do a song for him. I think Kane might have even gave him the Grab Bag sample, and he sped up the B Black Baby drums, and he did it. And I found the other day a conversation between me and Cool V. I'm trying to remember what it was on. Oh, it was on Instagram, because Vaughn is a friend of mine. I love talking about records with Vaughn and history. Cool V is someone you might want to do.
That's Biz's cousin, right?
Yeah, he was a
Okay,
DJ,
word.
but his memory is crazy.
Okay.
He remembers everything.
Okay.
And he kind of counterbalances Biz's outlandish tales. So Vaughn set me straight on Set It Off, and 45 King did indeed do Set It Off.
Wow.
with I think Marley might have put in like UFO, because he put UFO in every record he made for like 10 years. But that was a 45 King record he doesn't get credit for either. And he also did Microphone Fiend.
I was a fiend before I became a teen. I melted microphones instead of cones of ice cream. Music orientated, so when hip hop was originated, fitted like pieces of puzzle, complicated.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
from one of his beat tapes, and Eric had him redo it and like paid him in cash and didn't give him credit, I believe.
That's like the funkiest beat ever. That's crazy. But
Yeah,
when you
the
hear that
Schoolboy
though,
Crush.
and you okay, yeah, you hear it with the rest of 45
Well, he
King
had
stuff,
a
it makes
promo
sense.
with Fat Five Freddy rhyming over it. That ran on
Wow.
Red Alert. Yeah, I'm not going out like a chicken on Thanksgiving. That was the record. So yeah, he's underrated because he didn't have the ownership, and he didn't promote himself as like Latifah and the 45 King. He didn't have a mix show. You know what I mean? So that all worked against him, I believe.
So business wise, was he a part of the signing of Latifah? He wasn't even a part of that.
He was the producer,
Right.
but he wasn't part of it.
Right. He wasn't connected with her as a business wise as an artist.
And that's
He was
why
a
when the
separate
album came
entity.
out, you notice he didn't do the whole album.
Right. Right.
You know, and Naughty was under him too, really. If he had a better business sense, he probably would have had Naughty.
Right. And so it was all the flavor unit out of Jersey? Everybody was
All
out
them
of
from
Jersey?
Jersey, yeah.
Got you. Okay, word. So when you first hear is Wrath of the Madness, is that the demo that they play for you when that first time in your office?
I mean, the demo is virtually the song that came out.
But that's the song that they played in the office?
And then he played me Princess of the Posse as well.
Mm-hmm,
And, you know, I don't know if you know, she played the keyboards on Princess of the Posse.
I did not know that.
He's playing that bass line. And I thought the other reason I loved Latifah when I first heard it was I love dancehall.
Right.
And, you know, there was like, at that point, hip hop and dancehall were like cousins, brother, sister, right? And that kind of died. But when we went out in the clubs back then, and Red Alert, I think, set the tone for this. Dancehall started the party. So you warmed it up with some dancehall, then you play rap, and then you might have played some house, and then you might go back to rap, right?
Gotcha.
But you know, there was the records everyone was playing, like One Blood by Junior Reed, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a slew of records, all the Shabba stuff and all that, you know. So Roots and Culture and all these records were getting played. So when she touched on that, I thought that was super hip. And we didn't really have anyone at Tommy Boy's doing that, and she was at the forefront of kind of doing that. She was before that became like a thing everyone did. Poor Righteous Teachers were like touching on it, and I think they're a little later even.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they are later. So she was early on doing that. I think maybe only KRS-One and Just Ice were fucking with dancehall type shit, and she was a female doing it. And I really thought she was, when I heard her, I was like, she's the best woman rapper, and she was a young woman, the best female rapper I'd ever heard.
So I guess you weren't into MC Light then, because
I was. I liked MC
okay.
Light despite her high-pitched voice, because
Right.
she was just nice. She could just
Yeah,
rap.
she was
She
dope.
just nasty.
Super dope.
Yeah, she was like right there with Light, and totally different than Light. And you know that Light's supposed to be on Ladies First, and she wasn't.
That's interesting. Okay, so we're going to touch on Ladies First in a minute. I'm interested. You said you took her music around a new music seminar.
Yeah.
I remember I would read about stuff like that. All that stuff was over with by the time I was an adult. So tell people that weren't aware of what New Music Seminar, How Can I Be Down, like what those events were.
So New Music Seminar is several years before How Can I Be Down. New
Okay.
Music Seminar was like a seminar for new music. It was owned by Tom Silverman, and it became. It didn't just showcase rap music. It was all kinds of music. It was pretty eclectic. A guy named Mark Josephson, who had a magazine called The New Music Report with Tom Silverman. They owned it together.
Okay.
It was like the CMJ before CMJ. They owned it with a guy named Joel, what's Joel's last name? I think Joel Bogart. He died. He was he was the president of Island Records at one point. Joel passed away, and that was the people who ran it. They owned it. It showcased all kinds of new music, and this thing called the Battle for World Supremacy, what became a centerpiece for it. And that was an MC and a DJ battle. And that's where Jazzy Jeff first blew up. He came and he showed the world transforming. Like he broke out the transform scratch there, and he did all the, that crazy routine live at Union Square and all that. So it had a big, after like the first or second year, it had a big draw for the rap community, and a lot of the stuff started becoming geared more towards rap. They do panels, and people would be on the panels, and there'd be like all kinds of people from all around the country. And it was really genius because Tom and Monica were really doing market research at the same time.
Right.
And
right,
they were also,
exactly.
and they're also flying in key DJs. And like, not payola, but like, hey, we'll fly you to New York and you can be on our thing and we'll pay for it all. And so there was that to it too. So it was a great marketing.
Like radio
tool for Tommy Boy.
DJs.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
then they're more inclined to play Tommy Boy records because they're part
Greg
of this
Mack
whole
gets
thing.
flowing in and they wine and dine,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, it's so smart.
Yeah, man.
I really missed that. I really wish that was something that they had an analog for today.
Well, they couldn't have it today because even as they did later ones, they became more violent.
Right.
You
I
know-
remember. Yeah. People would wait to meet other crews and
Right.
settle beef in the worst kinds of ways.
People don't know how to act.
Yeah, that's real. Guess why we can't? That's why we can't have nice things.
Right, exactly. Give a shit, we fuck it up.
Yeah. So when y'all took her music around New Music Seminar, like what happened? What ended up happening?
Man, she was buzzing. It was fast. It was instantaneous. Really, the minute we got the record, it just went. Everyone started playing it. All the DJs in New York played it. It started playing in L.A. on K-Day. Greg Mack, he had something going on with Tommy Boy because he played every Tommy Boy record. Like we could have been from Compton the way he was playing our shit. And
That's tight.
And it just popped off. Like it popped off when she started doing shows. And that's the other thing. She was a great performer.
Wow, so she had it all.
Tremendous performer, and she had the Safari sisters, these two hot girls, and they would dance and dress like her, and they dressed all military, kind of militant. She had her style was down, and Monica helped with that. Her mom Rita was really involved. Rest in peace, Rita Owen, who was a wonderful lady, and her mom was really involved in everything too. And she had the thing about La was that she's a good person. She comes from a good family. Like she had home training. And some rappers don't have that. She had that in buckets. And everyone she met would be engaged by her because she was really cool. She was like your homegirl you grew up with. She was the nicest person, so she really had that energy. Talk about PMA. She had PMA in buckets. And I really feel that with her talent really helped her a lot. And I remember clearly she played the Apollo early on. She was the guest performer on Amateur Night at the Apollo. And she tore that shit down. She only had 2 songs. And she tore...
Was that Wrath of the Madness and
Princess
of the Posse?
She tore that motherfucker down. I mean, tore it down. And, I remember her at Hotel Amazon, I think Irving Plaza. Every time she got on, she tore shit down.
So how long after this do y'all start working on the album?
A long time. Because I didn't work on the whole album. And I left before it was done.
So you were off of Tommy Boy.
I went to work at Elektra by the time the whole album was done. But I worked on some of it. And we went and did the second single. And this is the worst story. So the record was done. I thought it was good, but I didn't think it had a strong enough hook. Dance for me. I didn't think it was a musical hook. The hook was the horn.
Right.
And I convinced 45 King to put in Sly and the Family Stone, Dance to the Music.
Just dance for me.
And he should have punched me in my mouth. because I cost him probably all the publishing on that record.
I see. Right.
I mean,
okay.
the whole record's an
okay.
Alvin Cash sample anyway. It's it's Easy Dancing, the Commodore's cover with the break version that there was a bootleg of it. Downstairs Records that everyone has. It has Crazy Drum Break on it, and that's a record to use. It's a fast ass record, another dance record really. And I was like, it needs a bigger hook, and he placated me, and we put that in there, and I can't tell you if it hurt the record or not. It definitely hurt the publishing. Some may say it was a bigger hook. Personally, I love Sly and the Family Stone, but go fast forward in time. If I had told that to certain other artists or producers, they would have told me to get bent. And he was such a nice guy that he went for it and it ended up in the record. And the record also connected right away. Bong, another one. It went right away. It was a banger.
Yeah. I remember that. So I remember watching that video a lot.
Yeah, it was the first one with the
yeah.
video. Fat Five Freddy did it.
Yeah.
The video was popping. She was dancing, and before that record came out, though, we started going to do shows, and I remember clearly going to L.A. with her to do a few shows. We did Skateland and World on Wheels, and World on Wheels was the craziest place we'd ever been to. We were both like, "Yo, this shit is wild," because it was.
Yeah, and this is after you were already there with De La?
I never did World on Wheels with De La. I did it with I did Skateland. World on Wheels was the blood one, and. Yo, this is great. We went to L.A. with Matt McDaniel, the Duke of Denmark, who was like a hot club DJ in New York, who we took on the road, and he was a turd. We were never take, and we realized he was a turd like 2 minutes after we got to L.A. when he was like complaining about everything, and we were like, she was like, you should just DJ, and I probably should have, because he wasn't doing shit except playing records. So we went to K-Day, and we're on K-Day. She's getting interviewed, and they played an ad for her show on Saturday at Skateland that we hadn't booked. And we're like,
whoa.
We're like, yo, what the fuck? And Matt McDaniel was with us, and he lost his mind because he's got a book for Friday.
Okay.
And I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, man. And I was like, it was an Uncle Jam show. I don't know if you know what Uncle Jam was. Uncle Jam's Army.
Uncle Jam's Army,
So
yeah.
I knew Uncle Jam. He's Roger Clayton, rest in peace. He was a hustler, boy. So so what the fuck? Man, where the fuck is Uncle Jam, motherfucker? And he literally called the station. And he was like, yo, what up, D? I was like, yo, I was like, I have to mind my P's and Q's with Uncle Jam. I can't talk out of pocket to that dude. We're in LA, and it's how it.
He's well-connected
man. And he's the big homie. But he was trying to run game on me. So I had to exercise diplomacy, which I wasn't really a master of yet. But I was like, yo, Roger, what's going on, man? You got Matt tripping on me, and you got me at Skateland, and we ain't got no money, we ain't got a show book. He's like, nah, little homie, like, I got you, like, don't trip. I was like, don't trip. I was like, yo, what, He's like, you going back Sunday, right? He's like, yeah. He's like, so I want to put some money in your pocket. That's what he told me. Like, he was doing me a favor. And I was like, oh, here comes some bullshit. And Uncle Jam was like, I got $1,000. We might have started at $750. I was like, hell no. He was like, $1,000. I was like, hell no. I was like, 1,500. He was like, 1,250. I was like, 1,500. He's like, 1,250. I was like, 1,500. He's like, 1,250, and I'll send a limo for you. And I was like, all right, let me talk to Latifah, man. But that was fucked up.
Right, because I mean, you got two shows in the same market one day
you can't do
after
that.
another, right? Like,
promoters
it's
going
not gonna
crazy.
work.
So,
right.
I talked to Latifah, and I said, "What do you want to do?" She said, "I want to do it, but I need 1,500 because Matt was paying us, I think, 1,200. Or Matt was paying us 1,000, and he was like, I was like, I tried, I got 1,250, and she was like, bet, let's do it. So I called Roger back. I said we could do it. Matt's losing his mind. We did the show at Skateland. And that was cool. It was whatever. It was gnarly. And then we did, at World on Wheels, but then we did Skateland. And Skateland was the blood spot.
So, in Skateland was the one that Uncle Jam booked?
Yeah, I think it was in Linwood or Compton. I think Linwood. Maybe Compton, though. And it was maybe even Crenshaw, but it was, man, that shit was fucked up. We walked in and it smelled like dust. I was like, she's like, yo, you smell the dust? You smell that dust? I was like, yo, it's going to be gnarly. And it was just the weirdest thing. I met Ice Cube and Dr. Dre there, but it was a blood club, which is really weird to me because I would later think they were Crip related. And they were there, and I got their phone number, and we had a big Samoan guy who was like a booyah.
Booyah
He
Tribe?
wasn't official booyah. He was booyah light. And this dude walked us around with a shotgun in the club.
Whoa.
It was so wild, and it made Skateland look palatial. It was, it made World on Wheels look palatial. Skateland was fucking wild, and everyone was in red, and it was completely blooded out. And that's the first time I'd ever seen that shit. It scared me way more than Skateland. And we got out of there, and I remember the limo was a fucked up old budget ass limo, and Latifah said, "Yo, that ain't a limo, that's a demo." And we kept going, "It's a demo, it's a demo." We kept making that joke. It's a demo. So that was our first show in LA, and I got in a fight in a parking lot, and I punched someone in the head, and I broke my finger. Wow. I remember that too. I came back, my hand was like the size of a football, and I had to get pins in my hand because I'm a fucking dick, and it was a guy from New York too. So fucking stupid. And Latifah was like, "You got to stop that." I was like, "Yeah, I got to stop." I was a bad drunk. I got drunk and hit somebody. So that was the first time we went there. We went there another time after that for the next record, and I remember she did a show with Tone Loc, I think, and Young MC. That was our LA experience, and we started. The second single hit, the video hit, and it was time to make the album. And we're making the album, and 45 King was doing a lot of the album. And I'm actually going to pull up the album so I could tell you probably the halfway point when I disengaged because I was making like $4 an hour and I had a real job in front of me.
That's real.
Let me see if my luck is not even on. Now Tommy Boy's just sold the whole catalog, which is interesting as well.
You talking about in the last week or so? That news that came out?
They just sold it to I'm trying to remember who they sold it to, but
didn't he just get it back?
They got it back a couple years ago, and he bought all this other stuff.
Right, okay.
And they went and sold the shit, and I mean it. Okay, Dance For Me, Come To My House. Mama Gave Birth to Soul Children. I remember when they made that. That was killer, and Prince Paul did that.
Yeah, that's the one with De La Soul.
Yeah, and she was part of the Native Tongues. They adopted her, basically.
Because that's what I had a question about that, right? Because, and all of your description of the time and the era, and she's coming from Flavor Unit. When I first see her, she's, standing side by side with the natives. And I'm like, was that the cause of any tension?
Nah,
Since she's
not at all. That was
from a crew?
Nah, that was all love. That was like they greeted her with open arms and she was into it.
But I guess I'm thinking more, from the Flavor Unit side.
Flavor Unit were always cool about everything. Them dudes was cool in the gang. They were
That's what's up.
Super nice dudes, super stoned out, and just nice cats. Apache was writing the rhymes and Latifah, so they had some piece of everything also. So they had some publishing and they were like really cool.
So they
dudes.
wanted her to get as big as possible.
100%. They were all rooting for it, just because she was people's too, right? So
yeah.
So songs I do remember clearly were Mama Gave Birth to Soul Children, The Pros, which I think Daddy O did, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Daddy O was on that song with her.
Yeah, he produced it. It was for this funky reggae compilation my friend Matt Robinson was doing. He had a club in L.A. We used to fuck with him every time we went to L.A. He was my old roommate before I got in the music business. And he ended up being the president of Capitol Records. And Funky Reggae was his label, and he had The Pros for his compilation. Not sure if the compilation ever came out, but that's what it was for, and we just used it.
Okay.
Ladies First, of course, 45 King did. I remember that. We met Moni through the natives, through Africa. That was Africa's shorty. Latifah went to England, and she was on tour with Moni, and Moni and her became dumb tight. Moni was like her sister. And so we heard Moni, and we all wanted to sign Moni, but she had a really smart manager, Steven, what was his name? He was really cool, English cat, white dude, he managed her, and he was in the middle of everything rap in England, including her. Everyone was cool, man. It was good vibes, and Red Alert was like the linchpin of it all. And he was playing her records, playing De La's record that came out at the same time, on the same label. She was pretty Afrocentric prior to them, so she fit right in. She was, black medallions, no gold. That was her all day, and so it all made sense that she would be part of that, the family. We were all running around together having fun, and it was innocent. People wasn't really, how can I say, So rap had been kind of, rap is, macho and kind of closed-minded maybe. And natives were the antithesis of that. Everyone was open-minded and was into all kinds of things and had, Jungle Brothers did Girl I'll House You, right?
Right.
OG B-Boys, the house music was for gay people, right? So, that's like an example of how we were thinking. And so, everything just came together. It was completely organic and everyone was cool and gang from day one. I mean, it was like, and De La was like the big bros and Prince Paul is their big bro. So he obviously did Mama Gave Birth to Soul Children, which was, it's an incredible song. It's great.
So we're talking about Latifah and Black Medallions No Go, which was De La, and then she kind of fit into that too. And so there's this imagery, especially like in the Ladies First video, right? Like it's very Afrocentric, Egyptian kind of iconography. And you had mentioned it up top, but I wanted to touch on it again. I'm wondering what the extent of Monica Lynch's influence was on creating that image.
Yeah, Monica styled her for sure. Monica kind of dressed that way. They kind of look like they dressed like alter ego versions of each other at that time. Monica would wear the big hat, and she liked to wear like colorful, like kind of kente stuff sometimes. And not too many white people could pull that off. She could pull it off because she had style, and she's, she definitely was a huge influence on Latifah. She worked closely with her on the imaging. Monica's really good at that, and I handled more the music side of it. And man, we have 45 King holding the backbone down, and Monica was definitely super involved, and they are super good friends to this day. And, Latifah is it wasn't hard, man, and the good ones are never hard. It's never that hard,
Like, you mean making the record?
Making the records, getting their imaging out there, the way they want to be perceived. It's never that hard because all the greatest marketing comes from something that's marketable, right? So she wasn't hard. You have to make it contrived and invent shit for her or De La because they both had their own unique voices, like style-wise, image-wise, point of view-wise. So, you just accentuate what's there. And that was the case with both of those artists. And Latifah was like a marketing person's dream. She has $1 million smile. She walked in a room and she radiates
Lit it up,
something bigger than just music. She lights up the room in a humble way, not in an obnoxious way. So Flavor Flav lights up the room, but you want to get rid of him after 15 minutes. So she doesn't have that. She's really affable and she's a natural, like I said. She's completely a natural and it was really cool to see people take to her because I felt that way from the minute I met her, and so did Monica, and so did the world apparently.
So in Ladies First, again, just to stay on that for a second, there had been, women in hip hop at the time, Roxanne Shante, MC Lyte, there's plenty of others. But Ladies First, to me, feels like a first, like, feminist type of rap song. Did it feel like that at the time?
100%. And I was there when they made the song. I wasn't around when they did the video. I remember really liking the video and being mad that I was no longer working at Tommy Boy because the video was so dope.
Yeah.
And Shakim had come into the picture at that point too.
Shakim?
And Shakim Campari, her manager to this day.
Okay.
He was like a street guy from Newark. He was but he was super smart. And he ran everything like kind of from that point on, and he was another huge asset. See, she benefited from having a real manager. And Shah made, he had on-the-job training. He made it up as he went along. And only a few people are smart enough to figure that out. Him, Chris Lighty, a few others, and he figured it out, man. She had a strong manager who could go toe-to-toe with anyone. That helped her greatly, and I do believe that was the first overtly feminist piece of messaging in rap music. The song, the lyric, and the video. And her imaging was always feminist in a sense. Feminist, but to me in like an Afrocentric, cool way, in a way that wasn't corny. I mean, look, she was like a rapping Shirley Chisholm or something.
Right.
It was like, she, because, Shirley Chisholm reminded me of, people's moms I knew, right? You always
Right, on the
thought
block, yeah.
Right, she just seemed like she was cool as hell. So, and Latifah kind of reminded me of that. And she's really an extension of her mother, Rita, who was a super, super nice woman, super sweet and involved and did a wonderful job raising her and her brother Lance, who passed away in a motorcycle accident. She was a really nice lady. And I think, she was raised well. She was a good kid. And you could feel it in her music.
Princess of the Posse.
I love that song.
which is one of the first two songs she has, one of the earliest ones you heard. And again, we're going to contextualize all this in the context of the era this stuff was in, because she's singing that hook, right? And
Yep.
now that's something we kind of take for granted, because so many artists rap and also sing their own hooks. But at that time, was that something that happened a lot?
Well, singing goes back to the earliest days of rap, right? Yes, we can, Jazzy Sensation, right? Those are singing hooks, right? Hollywood was singing. So, part of the root of rap music is harmonizing, Cold Crush Brothers,
Right.
doing unison vocals, singing. But the way she sang, she was really singing, right?
She was singing, yeah.
Yeah, she's really singing. So it was a departure of sorts. And it also, as much as it was a departure, it was a throwback to the days of Cold Crush and them singing, right? So it was full cycle. But, it wasn't the norm to sing like that in your hook back then. And she aced it with a very identifiable vocal tone and style. And she could actually really sing.
They call me the high priestess of disaster. Although I'm not to dread, they're not to rasta. There's never been a word I can't master. I've always been.
What was, if you were compare and contrast, you had just come off of working on De La's album, which was, your first project that you're A&Ring, and so you're in this studio now with this project.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell I did with De La. Something. I had a lot of fun.
But what was this experience like if you were to compare the two?
A little different because 45 King came really prepared. He
wasn't making stuff on the spot.
Nah,
and that sort of thing.
everything he did was premeditated, and that's how he worked, And she had her rhymes rehearsed already. She moved very fast in the studio. It was pretty easy. I remember that when we mixed, I want to say Danced for Me, but it might have been, we did. We remixed Wrath of My Madness because Tom Silverman said the vocals wasn't loud enough. And it took us 2 times to mix it, and the demo sounded better because the vocals were right. We were chasing the demo. So that'll show you how good 45 King's demos were. So, he knew what he was doing, and because she had worked with him so much, she knew what she was doing. And she's a natural, man. She's easy to record. Her vocal tone, jumps on the mic quick. Very easy to get her sounding good. You don't need a lot of effect on her voice. A little reverb and you're good.
So you tell the story of, you talking 45 King into putting the Sly Stone into to Dance With Me. But
don't kill me.
But since they're already coming to the studio with songs, how much room does that give you to have input as an A&R for the label?
Not a lot, to be honest. After that one, I was like, you know what? I might have fucked up. I didn't interject much, man. And 45 King didn't need much, and it was a different kind of thing. The way De La made their records was more by commune, like Paul, Dave, Mace, Posse. They're all throwing things in the stew. I was around. I gave him a record or two. Monica, I think, gave him a record or two. Double B, I think, gave him a record or two. People who were around. Q-Tip gave him a record or two. Maybe Africa. So their shit was thrown in the pot and like, let's go. It was like gumbo. And 45 King and Latifah had a different way of making records. It wasn't by community as much. And 45 King's man, I think Fat Louis Vega, as opposed to Louis Vega, has a song on there. I think he did a song, but mostly 45 King. He did a lot of it, and he knew what he was doing.
So let's talk about the house music thing a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you said, OG hip hop people think house music is for gay folks, and there's a wave kind of happening, right? Because you got Latifah doing this house music. You like you said, Jungle Brothers. How did this work together? Like, if you were at a party where people playing hip hop songs and also playing the house songs,
100%. You played a house set every set. In the hip hop party, they played probably at least a half hour, if not 45 minutes of house music, and it was usually a prime time, and that got the girls, dancing. and it's up-tempo music, and rap was pretty up-tempo too at times. And it was records like Todd Terry, right? Because his records are very b-boy for house records. They're hard records made on SP12. They sound, the way he made those records sound like they're constructed like a hip-hop record, but they're 123 beats per minute, but they're house records, right? They're not all four on the floor, so Go Bango, Take Me to the Batmobile, Party People, which is the record that Jungle Brothers used for Girl, I'll House You. It's the same backing track. These records and a host of others, Ray's Break for Love, they're all getting played in the context of the hip-hop party, and they're all, the young hip-hop kids are all dancing to that, and we're all into that kind of music. And if you look at even the records, De La's sampling, and even Prince Paul, they're sampling records that are played at clubs like the Paradise Garage, up-tempo records like Instant Funk, and even Knee Deep, and a lot of these records. So they're in a tempo range that's not that far away from house music. And they were played in clubs like the Fun House, Paradise Garage, and the Loft. And not that, I don't think any of those guys are cognizant of that, but Red Alert was cognizant of it. I was cognizant of it. Todd Terry is cognizant of it. 45 King is cognizant of it. So there's a crossover between these records that are what we called it club music before it was called house music. So club music is what maybe people call boogie now. Right? And club music is all those up-tempo funk records. Like if you look at my Instagram, there's a billion of them. That's the music I really like. So those kind of records, like Don't Make Me Wait, Marshall Jefferson house music, Work Your Body, all these records are getting played. So it was a natural thing. And back then there was like kind of the joke, like, where's your hip house record, right?
Right. That's what I'm interested
Where's
in.
your hip house record? Where's your where's your reggae record, right?
Right. Because later on in hip hop, you start to get the influx of like the hardcore rap album with the R&B track. But at this time, it's like, okay, you do the hardcore rap album, but you do one for the house music. You know what I'm saying? And then that kind of ended. And it made
it was quick. It was quick.
Yeah,
because KC Flight had the joint, right? Planet E was banging, and that was a hot record. And then Jungle Brothers had a hot one, obviously. Why am I losing my Jungle Brothers? What the fuck is the name of the Girl, I'll House You?
I'll house you.
And that's a classic, and that's banging, and that's a big hit in New York. So everyone starts doing it.
Check this out. Girl, I'll house you. Girl, I'll house you. Girl, I'll house you. You in my hood.
Right. And then at some point, it kind of diverts.
De La never had a house record.
Like. They had kicked out the house, but that was a joke.
Exactly. And Tribe never had a house record.
Tribe never had a house record. That's real.
So not everyone had a hip house record, but it was definitely a trend.
Right. So you leave Tommy Boy while this project is still being made.
Yeah, it was like mostly done, and the house record got made when I left. I don't know if that would have got made on my watch.
That's real.
And I left, and the record came out, and I hate saying this, but I thought the record was not as good as it could have been. I felt like if I had stayed there, the record would have been better.
What do you think you would have done?
I would have had more Wrath of My Madness songs.
Got you.
I think she should have just rapped a little harder, a little more. And it's a short album.
It is short. It is short. So because they put all the remixes at the end, it kind of like filled it out, but the album itself is kind of short.
They did that to kind of make the album longer. So Ladies First was a hit, but that was done really early. I love the Queen of Royal Badness. I thought that was really good, and I like King and Queen Creation because it's like a dancehall thing. That was really cool.
And it's like that's the one where 45 King is rapping on it too. Yeah,
exactly. Which I thought was cool.
That was tight. That was tight to hear.
I thought, and they did it in his basement. It had that feel. I would have just probably wanted to get a couple more hard 45 King joints. But the record's good. It's pretty good. I just thought it could have been like a 10, and it was like 8, 7.5.
Got you.
So,
but what was it like leaving a project? The first artist you signed, they're working on their album.
It hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt because I was catching crickets at Elektra, and Tommy Boy's on fire, and I'm over here making twice as much money with no hits.
Wow.
Shit hurt. And then Digital Underground hits, and
who you also signed.
I signed. I was involved.
Okay.
Like I was the one. Like Ed Strickland brought it in, and I was like, I love this. We should do it, and everyone agreed, and we did it. So I was like by committee, and whatever. There's always kind of some debate on that one.
So you leave you leave this album as it's being made. You go on to Elektra, and what I'm curious about is in this time, were you also working on the Third Base album like at the same time?
No, I wasn't working on it um, in any official capacity. They're doing the first record.
Right.
And though I was around a lot and I connected them with Sam Sever, and I was at a lot of the sessions hanging out, I didn't make any of the music on the record.
I
And
see.
I was not the official A&R person. Faith Newman was, but I was at the studio 18 times more than Faith Newman or anyone else from Def Jam was.
But how is this working out timeline wise? Is this while you're at Tommy Boy that you're over at the studio, or is this while you're at Elektra?
At Tommy Boy, and I want to say crossed over to Elektra, and I was going to work at Elektra, and I wanted to sign them to Elektra, and Raul Roach didn't want to sign them, and largely because I'd have to ask him, but I think because they were white, he felt weird hiring a white A&R guy signing. His first group he signed was a white group. I talked to him about it, and I got to hit him up, refresh his memory, but I can't remember. But he was thinking about signing them, and he didn't want to do it. And then they had this deal in the air with Russell that was just taking forever and never really was coming to fruition. Like Def Jam was like yeah, nah with them. Yeah, nah. You know what I mean? And never was doing the deal. And it was kind of Leor's baby. And it started as a Search solo record, which no one knows. 3 or 4 of those songs were Search solo records. And Search couldn't get a deal.
Wow.
Like no one would sign him. And Pete was in the studio struggling by himself. Sam Sever was my really good friend and my former downstairs neighbor. I called Sam and asked him if he would go to the studio with Pete and help him out. Pete had records, but he didn't really know how to produce records. He was like sampling them in the studio. So Sam went and hooked the record up, and I can't remember what song it was, but it came out pretty cool. It might have been, I can't remember what song it was. My memory evades me. Might have been No Static. So they end up, Sam is in a car with Search, and he tells him that Pete's pretty good, and Search has a chip on his shoulder about Pete. They had a mutual friend, Blake Latham, Keo, the graffiti kid, who was in a group earlier with Pete Nice called the Surgeon Generals. That was Pete Nice, Clark Kent, this kid, Shamik, the beatbox, and Blake, Vanilla B, who disappeared into the ether for several years and then came back later, and rapping had passed him by. And that was their original group. So, not to digress, he suggests, with me backing him up, that maybe they should be a group. And they battle in Search's car, the Ford Granada think tank that looked like a cop car. And the seed is planted for them to become a group, and they become a group. And several of the Search solo songs, including maybe Product of the Environment, I'd have to look and see, jog my memory, become songs that he spits a verse on, and they become Third Base songs. And Richie Rich comes with Pete as his guy. That's his guy. They come together
Gotcha.
as a 2-for-1 group. I'm trying to think what songs were Soul in the Hole, I believe. Maybe Product Environment, Words of Wisdom. I believe that those songs were, maybe Step Into the AM. No, that was later, and that's the Bomb Squad did that. Those 3 songs, I believe, were already crafted by Search solo, and Pete was he was put on those records.
We're gonna dig into that probably in the next time we sit down. We'll dig into.
It's a sticky
the Third Base
one.
Story. I know it. I know. We'll see. We'll test it out. We'll see how it's feeling.
I mean, the worst thing about Third Base is those guys don't get along. It's acrimonious, and like we were all kind of like, there was some pick a side thing going on a little bit. And I don't want to say I ever picked a side, but it's ironic because me, this guy named Mark Pearson, who's my business partner in like all this film and TV stuff. Like to this day, like me and him have a company together he's one of my best friends. He was the road manager, and he was like the in really for Pete Nice to meet me even. And so I'd say Barbito and maybe Curious and Search, and I would have put Doom in there and a few others of us. We all kind of were in this thing together, and I don't know if any of us look back and really celebrate Third Base the way we should celebrate it because of all the acrimonious energy around it. And so like I look back on that, and part of it is also Def Jam's business practices. Like I've never really made any money on Third Base, but I produced Pop Goes the Weasel. I made like, nothing. Like we barely ever got our advance. We got our advance when the record was like a top 10 hit. I got the back end of my advance. And between me and my two partners, we made $12,000 to produce 5 songs or 4 songs on the second record. And I think we had to wait till the record was a hit record to get our back end. We've never seen a royalty. We've never seen a royalty statement. Every single sample was cleared out of our end. And it was, and I think Sam Sever has very similar experiences in never getting paid. So, and I think Sam has some feelings about it too. So for all of us, because the business and the minutia surrounding it makes it a little hard to celebrate it, but it should be celebrated, and we don't really all get to celebrate it the way we should, because the music, I think some of it holds up. I think Sam Sever did some of his best works on that record. The stuff he did is really good, and for whatever reasons, it's always like there's a lot of contention surrounding it, and some bad feelings, I think. And like with the fucked up thing is like I love Pete Nice, man. That's my man. No one can make me laugh like Pete. And through the ups and downs, like, and there's been some. Me and Pete are, we're 100% like that's my man. We're good, and we'll be good to the wheels fall off. And I don't have the same amount of gratitude coming from Search. So and that's a bummer because like with De La or Latifah or Brand Nubian, for 99% of my acts, there's a lot of mutual gratitude. Guys I worked with, and I don't really get that same feeling with Search. I don't feel it come back. I feel like, I don't want to say maligned, but the human aspect of it is missing. And it's not missing with a lot of others that I worked with. And even people I know from along the way.
Let me ask you this. Do you feel like in the story of Dante Ross's hip hop, career, that Third Base is important to talk about?
It is, because my first big hit record I produced is Pop Goes the Weasel.
Okay. So we should do it, if not just to make sure that we give that.
I probably said everything I need to say about Third Base just now. I don't know if we need to say anything else.
Thanks for watching that, and if you dug that, leave a thumbs up and say what up in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to Stony Island Audio for more.